Welcome to my condensed film review of Avengers Endgame. Now, this is a movie I was lucky enough to see on the night it was released at midnight. Went to the double bill showing, and it was, the best decision I could have possibly made. I'd strongly recommend you probably do this yourself, but if you don't, you definitely give the original, the part one in Infinity Wars, a watch before you go and see this. You want to have as much fresh in your memory as possible to get the most out of this movie. But what I wanted to do in this review was just give some tips, really, give everybody some tips on the best way to get the most out of this movie experience, because movies like this don't come along very often. And I think it's very important that you see it at the cinema, but you get the most out of it as well, because you only get one chance to see a film for the very first time. And this is what I want to talk about. So, firstly, let's talk about where to see it. I unquestionably went to the 4DX screen at my local cinema. Unfortunately, we don't have an IMAX. I would have had to have travelled quite far for that. But in hindsight, I didn't even think about IMAX. I went in the 4DX, which is the moving seats, fog, wind, spray. Really good experience. But I do think to myself it would have been even better to have seen it in IMAX. And the reason for that is this movie was shot entirely in IMAX film. And that doesn't happen very often. Normally, parts of the movie will be shot in IMAX, but because the budget for these movies is so big, I've heard £550 million was the budget for this movie. Over the two movies, Infinity Wars and Endgame, apparently they've spent £1 billion. So it's a great opportunity to go and see it in IMAX, because there aren't going to be many films like this that give you the true IMAX experience. So that would be my top tip. And if you can't go to IMAX, definitely worth in the 4DX. Basically, my advice would be, if you're trying to save money and do this in the most cost-effective way, why not wait till a Tuesday or a Wednesday, see it in the best screen possible, book your tickets early so that you get the perfect seat, and go buy one get one free with your Meerkat movies. That to me would be the best way for people in the UK to see this. And then instead of it being 20 quid each, it might, or 15, whatever it costs, 15 to 20 quid, it'll be about a tenner each instead. So that would be my top tip. Get the most out of this movie experience by seeing it in a souped up cinema experience, not just your average cinema, because you'll probably want to go back and watch it again in a normal cinema environment afterwards. So yeah, definitely go and see it in those kind of screens. And also, don't sit too close. I was at the very front row, a little bit too close. So much was going on in the screen, couldn't quite absorb it as easily. So I would say probably around the middle of the cinema house is probably going to be the sweet spot for this movie, particularly if you're in an IMAX. So please go and see it in IMAX. Do what I wish I did. I'm going to travel to this other cinema at some point and see it in IMAX while it's still showing, because it's just so worth it. I mean, you do not see movie spectacles like this very often. So let's just briefly talk about what the film was like and did I enjoy it, before I move on to some more tips about how to get the best out of this experience. Now, unquestionably, if you're a Marvel fan, you're going to know that it's a good movie. I mean, is it possible for these guys to do a movie that isn't at least a solid 7 out of 10? I mean, personally, I'd probably rank pretty much all of them 8 out of 10 or more. There's the odd one I wasn't as bothered about. Captain Marvel isn't entirely my favourite character. Captain America, sorry, not Captain Marvel. But nevertheless, this was a cracker of a movie. What I particularly loved about it was the same thing that I loved about Guardians of the Galaxy, the comedy element that Marvel bring to the cinema now. It's not just an action movie, it's actually a real, genuine, laugh out loud comedy. I mean, I've been to comedy movies that are just comedy, and they haven't made me laugh anywhere near like what, say, Guardians of the Galaxy 2 did. Hilarious movie, and because of the character integration across the Marvel universe in this film, obviously there are some of my favorite characters in this movie, and they are hilarious. There was times when I was laughing out loud, as were plenty of the other studio cinema people. So it's definitely good for a giggle. But the other thing I want to talk about this movie, and the most important thing to say about this movie, is you can't say too much about this movie when you're doing a review. So be very careful with what you listen to. Stay away from watching too many trailers. The trailer that I've linked with this review is actually, I've watched it and it's not bad. It doesn't give anything drastic away. I'm quite impressed with Marvel that they've done a pretty decent job with this trailer of not really giving anything away. But that being said, there is still the odd little element where you might think, ah, because I've seen the trailer, I know that something is coming. And I don't know, I'd prefer to not know that. I went into this movie not having a clue what was going to happen. Hadn't seen any trailers recently, so I had nothing in my mind about what was going to happen. The journey that this movie took me on, I was completely surprised. I didn't know which direction we were going in. I didn't know where we were going. And I felt surprised many times watching this movie, which was a great experience. If you can go to a movie and actually be surprised and genuinely not know what's going to happen next, I think that is a win for the movie maker. So, you know, don't find out as little as possible. I actually watched Mark Kermode's review that he did, and I was quite impressed that he didn't give anything away. He did say one thing, which had I watched that, I wouldn't have known that one thing that he gave away. To some people, it might be obvious, but to me, it wasn't. So that would have been a bit of a spoiler, which I would have been disappointed about. So I'm not going to say too much more about that, other than I knew nothing about this movie. If you know nothing about this movie, then congratulations, because that is the best way to get the best emotional experience out of this movie. So stay away from reviews. You know you want to see this movie. You don't have to watch a review to figure out whether it's worth going to see a movie that cost £500 million to make. You know, if you love cinema, you're going to love this movie. Simple as that. And stay away from the trailers. You don't need to watch them. You know you want to see this film. Forget the trailers. Okay, so those would be my tips. And what I wanted to talk about was some tips for people who may not be Marvel fanboys. They may not be big fans of the movies, so they might not have seen the entire movie franchise, and they might not know all of the characters that well. So if that's the case, what you can do is treat these two movies as your inroad, as your way in to the Marvel experience, okay? So if you watch these two movies having never seen any of the others, then all of the other movies, you can then go and watch them on DVD or stream them, whatever your way of consuming media is. You can go back and watch them, and all of them will be like a prequel movie. And prequels are good. You can watch a movie, and then the prequel comes out years later, and you love the prequel. Look at the Han Solo, a Star Wars story. We've seen all the Star Wars movies, and then all of a sudden, a movie just about Han Solo, and where did he come from, and who is he, and what's he all about, and you love it. It's like, oh, great, you know. And it didn't stop you enjoying watching the Star Wars movie with Han Solo in just because you didn't know where he came from. So I think you can not panic. You can go to the cinema. Definitely watch Infinity Wars 1. That's the most important thing. This is a two-part movie, which I didn't even realise, do you know what I mean? Because I watched the movie a year ago, and I'm great at not remembering movies, so I get to watch them again as a first-time experience. So I didn't even realise this was like a Lord of the Rings trilogy, but a two-part version of that. So it's a continuation story, these two movies, Infinity Wars and Endgame. So all you need to do is watch Infinity Wars. At the very least, watch Infinity Wars, then go and watch Endgame, and you'll have a great experience, and it'll probably leave you addicted, wanting more out of the other Marvel movies. And then you've got all of the back catalogue that you can go and enjoy watching. So there's my top tip for newbies that are new to the Marvel universe. For those, also, go and see Captain Marvel first. Why not? It's out at the cinema now. Watch Infinity Wars at home, go see Captain Marvel at the cinema while it's still out, and then go and watch Endgame, and then at least you'll know a lot about one of the characters, which will be great, and then you can go back and watch all the others. And for those that dip your toe in, dip your dough out, you're not hardcore Marvel fans, if you've got Prime, or you might be able to search this online, there's a 7-minute video. Type Infinity Wars into Prime. You'll see a 7-minute recap video. It's like, must watch this before you watch Infinity Wars. And what it does is it gives you all of the linkages from the previous movies and how they link to Infinity Wars. So that's really good as a refresher. So give that 7-minute movie a watch if you're a part-time. Well, everybody should watch that 7-minute movie because it's a great little refresher. But for those who aren't hardcore fans and haven't seen all the movies, definitely watch the 7-minute recap. For those who are big fans, have seen all the movies and might think, which ones do I want a refresher? I probably wish I'd watched Ant-Man and the Wasp again, so I'd give that a watch. You definitely want to know what's going on with Black Panther. Thor Ragnarok, awesome movie, definitely worth another watch. And you'd probably get a kick out of Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2 again if you haven't seen them recently as well. Obviously, definitely go see Captain Marvel if you haven't. Why wouldn't you? I'm sure that's fresh in your mind. And Doctor Strange as well. I'm sure you've seen Doctor Strange, but if you haven't. So the ones from very recently, um, definitely handy to have those fresh in your mind. Not the end of the world if they're not, but that would be my tip. And for all of you hardcore fans, you've probably done exactly what I did. You've started at number one, Captain Marvel Civil War, the one that was chronologically first, and you've watched all of the movies in build up to this cinema experience, and therefore everything's fresh in your mind, and this is just an epic movie that ties in with everything that we've seen up until now. Oh, and Spider-Man Homecoming, definitely worth giving Spider-Man Homecoming a watch. Really enjoyed that movie. I thought it was very nice take on Spider-Man. Never a fan of Spider-Man previously, but love this guy now. Love Spider-Man, is one of my favorite characters. So definitely give Spider-Man a watch as well. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all I can really say about this movie. I don't need to go into deep. I can't go into detail. I'm not going to tell you anything about what happened other than it's a journey. It takes you. Whoa, what's happening? What's going to happen next? Oh my god! And the direction that it went in, I fell in love with. I was like, wow, I love this. This is my cup of tea of a movie. Got a big kick out of it. I really enjoyed the journey and the direction that it went on. And yeah, well, I'm not really going to say much more than that other than go see this movie. It's awesome. Go see it ASAP because you probably want to go and watch it again. Why not? You're not going to see a movie like this very often at the cinema. So stay away from the trailers. Best to know absolutely nothing. I would give this movie, I'd give it a 9 out of 10. You're thinking, why am I giving it a 10 out of 10? Well, it's difficult for any movie ever to deserve a 10 out of 10. And as good as this movie was, I would give the whole Marvel experience as a whole a 10 out of 10. But this particular movie, I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. Um, I'm not deducting it 1 point for any specific reason, because I can't talk about any specific reasons. But just know that this is a solid 9 out of 10 film. Takes you on a path that you might not have expected. That was my thing. I was like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen. I hadn't really thought about what was going to happen. And yeah, it was a journey, that's for sure, but a hell of an enjoyable one. So I hope you've enjoyed this review. I hope it's been important to you to make you understand. Stay away from finding out any information. Go and see the cinema. If you're new to this, don't worry. Go and watch these movies. Then you can become a Marvel fanboy and catch up with the back catalogue. So this movie is for absolutely everybody. I love everything about it, quite frankly. The guys that create this are just geniuses. I love them. Thank you, thank you, thank you for giving us this experience from one cinema lover to the other. It's been a joy. I have loved every minute of watching these movies. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I can't wait for the future. And I'll leave it at that. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next review and enjoy Avengers Endgame. Bye bye.